Right, hello. This video is going to be going over the MLA formatting, as we can see in the top left part, on an iPad to make your life easier and have a step-by-step process to follow as we go along. So, one of the first things that I do when I am working on my MLA formatting is I always start by clicking on the A at the top right. It may be in a slightly different spot for you. It could be here or up on this bar, but traditionally and typically as of 2026, it should be somewhere in this top right-hand side. So you're going to look for the little A with the underline, and you're going to click on that. Then a box will pop up with two different main categories, text and paragraph. We will be using both, but for now, we're just going to focus on the text side. You can see here, this is how you create all of the different functions in your doc. So you can use bold, italics, underline, strike through, or the formatting, which for English class, you will not need these formats. It has a style of text, which says normal. If we click on it, it shows us different heading types, title, all of that. We do not need any of this. Normal text is what we want. Our font, however, we will change. It says Arial, so we're going to click on this, and we're going to look for Times New Roman 12-point font. So for our font in MLA formatting, which is what we use in the high school setting, it will always be Times New Roman. If it's not Times New Roman, it's not correct. So the Google Doc will put everything in alphabetical order. So we'll scroll all the way down to where it says T, Times New Roman. When you're just using the generic Google Doc and you don't have any other fonts input, you can just scroll to the bottom and it's almost always going to be there. It'll change and show us our little check mark so that I'm good to click back. We're not done in this box, so we need to come back because we need to look at the size. So size says 11-point font. MLA format tells us that we need it at 12. So you can just click that. You can also click here and type. Sometimes mine won't let me do it, so I just use the arrows. If you are pasting things in, like later on when you're working on your essay, if you're trying to paste in a works cited that you're copying from somewhere else, like if the website has it or if you're trying to use a generator, make sure to always check and make sure that Times New Roman 12-point font is what it's at. My text color is automatically set to black, which is perfect. And then the highlight color, there is none. If we've ever messed up and like we can't remember what we've done, you can scroll down to the bottom and click clear formatting and it'll change everything back to Arial, 11, anything that you've done. All right, so we're done with our text side. We have Times New Roman and 12-point font in place. Now we're going to come over to paragraphs. And here is where we find all of the different options for how things align on our actual document. So up here, we see where we want our writing to start. Left hand is pretty much your normal in American writing. You can also center align. We use that for our title, which I will show you later. Right hand align, which we will not use in MLA format. And I think this is called legal, which makes everything centered. Sometimes when you paste things in, they will try to format to this legal. So always make sure that you're using the left-hand side for writing and your heading. This is also where we can force an indent, which is what these are. It shows us an arrow to which way it will indent if you click that button. I will show you that when we begin writing. You can number things here, and I believe this shows you all of the different formats for how you can have numbers in your system. Typically in writing essays, we don't use that all that often. This one to the right-hand side is the bullet point options. So we have that there as well. Again, in writing, you probably won't use that. And if you do use it, I will give you specific instructions. Now, the important part of this paragraph section is our line spacing. For all of our essay writing, we want our line spaces to be at 2.0. Oops, and I've just realized that my transcript probably isn't showing up here. We'll put it there. All right. So once our line spacing is at 2.0, we are good on this page for now. We want to keep it left-hand aligned for what we're going to be writing. We have our 2.0 space, perfect. All right, so now we can close this section. And here is where I'm going to type out my actual heading. So this is the information that when your paper is graded, that your teacher knows this is your paper. It always starts with your first and last name. And you should always put first and last name and make sure that your name is capitalized. It's your name. You're taking ownership of this paper. You want it to look nice. Okay. And then from here, we go to your teacher's name. I'm putting my name in just for example, but I'm going to replace it with teacher name. Make sure that you always have a title, whether it's Miss, Mrs., Mr., or Doctor or PhD or whatever their official title is. You include that here unless otherwise noted. Because that is showing what class you're using this for, and if it was ever to be referenced, again, that is why you include that there. Okay. So next, you press enter to get down to the next line, which is what we did here to have that separation. And notice, so we have the spacing here, and then notice that we got the space. I press enter once. You don't press enter more than once. Otherwise, it will make your spacing super funky and it will take up more space than it's supposed to, and that will lose you points. All right, next is the class name. And if you're in high school, you put English 1, 2, 3, or 4. So for us, we'll put English 2, but you would not include class name. And then you press enter one more time, and then you put the due date of your paper. You specifically put the due date or the date that you're turning in the paper itself on this last line to show when the paper was finished and you did not make any more changes to it. So I'm going to put today's date. And the funky thing about this is that we typically in the US write month, day, year. However, this calls for day, month, year. I'm just going to put today's date. So 09 July 2026 for the year. It's important that you write out the full date. We don't just do 09/07/26 because it can mess up the understanding of the date system, especially because we are here in the US. So we do 09, or we could do August 2026. Great. So that is our header for our MLA formatting, or sorry, our heading. We will have a header as well. So from here, you are going to press enter one more time. So now we're on this next line. However, our heading is done. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the top up here, and we're going to click on that center align where all of the lines are in the middle. And notice how my little blinking indicator moves to right here. Your essay title will go here. Typically, before I start writing a paper, I don't have a title ready unless I'm really inspired by my topic. But I put the essay title there so that I don't forget to complete it. All right, I'll press enter one more time. But now I'm going to come back up to where we just did our alignment up here at the top. And I'm going to click on left align to make sure that my essay is in the correct spot. So essay starts here. Now, what I'm going to do here is there's a couple of different ways that we could correctly indent this to make it pretty, right? So we could do just tab once, and then if I'm typing blah, 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 and I just keep typing until I'm on the next line, boom. The second line is aligned to the heading itself, and that's how it should look, right? So every time that I am going to add information or a new paragraph, I'll copy this, and then we're just going to paste it in a couple times. So let's say that's my paragraph, right? I press enter to go to my new line. Boom, look at that. It automatically indented it for me to make my life easier. Oops, but when I did that, it made it a little funky. Oh, it's because it's technically counting it as one word. So beautiful, right? Perfect. You can press tab, or let's say that I want it to align a little differently. I could press that. However, the problem we run into sometimes is that it'll try to left align. So if that happens, 1, you can come ask me, or 2, you can just press back and use the tab method. The tab method is typically the most consistent across the board and the easiest for you to navigate. Okay, so perfect. We've got our paper all formatted correctly, and it looks good down here. Now, something that we need to do is that we need to add our actual header to the top of our paper. So our essay is written, it looks beautiful. However, we need to have our last name and page number in the top. But if I click up here, it just takes me to this top line, right? That is not where your header goes. So what we need to do is we need to go up to the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. This is where our more detailed formatting options are. So we click on those 3 dots, and it shows my title for my paper, which, quick moment, if yours says untitled, I will not accept a paper that is untitled. So click on this little pencil, and it'll let you rename it. It'll be your last name and then the essay title. This helps me as your teacher so that when I'm going through and grading 70 different papers, that I know that this is your paper and what your title is. However, for the sake of mine is MLA formatting so that I know when it's in my drive what it's for. So we're now in this setting box. The 3 dots at the top right let us here. We want to turn on print layout because this is going to show us exactly how our paper is going to look when we print it, which is typically a requirement for essays. So we're going to turn that on. And now we can see exactly what our paper is going to look like. We have the indentations on the side, which is perfect. That is an MLA requirement. However, Google Docs is smart enough now to where it automatically formats that for you. Great news for technology. We also can see up here, there's now more space happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this space up here. 1, 2. Double clicking makes sure that we see that little gray line. This shows us that we're in the part of the paper that is completely separate. This is called the header to your paper. So just like at the beginning, we need to make sure, because we've clicked into a new section of our paper, Google Docs is smart, but not smart enough to know that we want it to be the same font and size. So we need to come back to our A with an underline on the top and open up our text settings. It brought us to the paragraph section because we used that last on the main part of the paper. So it's trying to help us. However, we want to go over to the text category. So we can see here that when we clicked onto this top, it's automatically reset to Arial and 11-point font for this section. So once again, we want to change our font to Times New Roman, 12-point font. Perfect. And we want to change our font size to 12. Great. Now we're done in this section. We don't need to do double spacing up here because there's not going to be anything other than one line of text here. So our next step when we are looking at this is we need to make sure that our header is on the right-hand side, because that's what MLA format dictates. So we come up to our main section up here again, where we see the different alignment for our paper and where words show up on our page. We are currently left aligned. However, we actually want to be right aligned so that it shows up on the top right of our paper. Because when you think about it, when we print out our paper and staple it, the staple is going to go in the top left corner, which would be super hard to see, and sometimes it's hard to see the information. So we add information up here to show, hey, this is our paper, once again showing ownership of our work. So up here, what you type is only your last name, and then you put 1 space. Make sure that your last name is capitalized. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go up to the plus. So we have our last name typed with capitalization, correct? There's 1 space after the word name. And we're going to click on the little plus icon in the top right-hand corner. So this is the insert setting. This is where we come to help insert links, comments, images, all of these good things. But the thing that we are going to be looking for here is our page number. So if I was to just type in the number 1 up here to try and have my page number, when I type that in and then I go down to my next page, the number 1 is still there. because I've only told Google Docs that I want the number 1 there by typing it. So I need to go in and add the page numbers. You may need to scroll down a little bit. That's totally fine. So we want to click page number as the category. And there's a little arrow next to it saying, hey, there's more things here. So it's going to give you a couple of different options. And the difference in these is that you can see where the number is. So the first one shows our numbers in the top right corner. The second option shows that there would be no number on the first page. This would be used if you're making like a formal title page where it says like only your essay title and your heading information. We don't do that here. You might do that in upper level classes. Your third option is numbers in the bottom right-hand corner starting on the first page. And then the last option is the same as the second, which is a title page, and then the number counting starts on the second page. So we want the first option here because our essay is going to start on our very first page. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to put in a 1 for me. Great. Now, you should always go down to your second page and make sure that there is a number 2 there to make sure that it is correct. All right, so everything is correct here. However, if my little indicator is here, I can't make changes down here to my essay. So you have to click out of that area, and once the little gray line goes away, you know that now you're working on the main paper again. All right, the final thing that we need to work on is our works cited. So I'm going to copy all of this and just make it like it's an example essay. So let's say, perfect. All right, that's my essay. So what I need to do is, if I have citations of any kind, which you will, you have to have a works cited page. So let's say I have a citation. Oops, not that. Let's say that I have to put in, let's say, Collins. Oops. That's my quote, or I have a quote right there. So what I need to do is at the very last line of my writing, I need to go up to our insert function again. So I'm going to go up to the top right, and I'm going to click on my plus again. So we're back here, but this time I need to put in a page break. This means that any writing after whatever is in front of my little line on my essay is going to go down to the next page. We do this because our works cited needs to be on its own unique page, because it's showing us the reference of any other material used, and that is so important. The citation is important to your whole essay. Otherwise, your writing is going to be plagiarized. So it deserves its own full page for recognition that, yes, I have used other people's work. So we're now at the top of our next page. And here, for our works cited, we need to come up to our alignment tools and click on Center Aligned, because this is a title for this section. So the top of this page should say Works Cited. We add the S to the end of work, because if we have multiple different articles or resources that we're referencing, it's multiple pieces of work. So Works Cited, and it should be capitalized and at the center of the top of this page. All right, just like with our heading, we press enter once. However, we know that we need everything to be left-hand aligned. So we need to go back and change our alignment from the center to the left-hand side. So for our works cited, we need to have a certain amount of information, which we'll go over in a different lesson, but the formatting of the works cited is important. So I'm going to make an example for you just so that you can see what it should look like here. So let's say that I'm going to reference a book. Or, yeah, let's do a book. So let's say I'm going to reference Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So it's going to go last name, comma, first name, period, the title of the book, period, publisher, published date, and then let's say, who's our publisher going to be? Random House Publishing, period. And then if I had to pull anything from a website, this is where the website would go. Or it would be the website title or anything like that. That's what would replace the publishing if we were using a website. And then it would be a link. So let's say like perfect. And then the final thing in MLA format is your access date. I'm using an example. So, all right. So for our works cited, it shows here that it's automatically indenting, right? Because that's what we did on our paragraphs up above. So that should be what we want here. However, that is not the case because MLA wants to make our lives a little funky fresh and make sure that we know how to use all of our formatting properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top left and I'm going to click the left indent because I want it to be aligned. But it's not going to work because it's trying to help me here. So it's going to be a little funky. Worst case, even if you try to press delete, sometimes it won't work. So what we're going to do is I've highlighted the whole reference. I'm going to click left align. But look, it still doesn't want to do it. So sometimes, and what I recommend you do is you open the web page version of your doc. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And I'm going to go to Safari instead. Uh-oh. Allegedly, I'm going to go to Safari instead. Perfect. And so here, I can see my doc right here. Sometimes when you try to go to Safari or when you try to go to Google Docs on Safari or Google Chrome or whatever on your iPad, again, the technology is trying to help you, so it will try to open up on the app. You just need to fully type out docs.google.com to make sure that it actually opens for you. All right, so I'm scrolling down to the bottom here. And I can see my works cited, same thing. However, now I have this fancy ruler at the top. If I click on this little blue rectangular line and drag it to where the triangle is, it will now align for me. But now I want the bottom part to be indented 1/2 inch. So they really need to switch fully. So the little triangle needs to go to the halfway mark and the rectangle needs to go to the 0. So now when I look at it, it's the opposite of what my body paragraphs are, right? The first line is not indented, but the second line is. That is what the formatting should look like for the works cited. And if I had more of the citations that I needed to add, it would look the same. So each one should look like that, right? Assuming that all of these would be different sources. All right, so we now have a beautifully formatted essay. We've got our heading up here. We've got our header up here, our heading with all of our class information, your name, our essay title, and there's only one space between our date at the end of our heading and our essay title. There's no need to have anything else like that. Every body paragraph is indented. My second page looks correct for counting pages. And my works cited looks formatted correctly. So this is all of the main aspects that you need to have in the formatting of your essay in order for it to be considered correct formatting. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask. Feel free to go back at different points of this video, or you can always email me if I'm not available right at the moment.